Hello friends, this video on Principles of Inheritance Part 9 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. Now we will talk about dominant and recessive trait. So dominant word I have been using quite some time in the previous slides also. Recessive is going to be a new term now. So let us see what are these traits. So dominant trait, as the name says, it is dominant, it is more powerful. So it is the trait that gets expressed in the offspring. It takes over the other inherited trait. Now as you have seen, if you look at the genotype of, especially if you look at the heterozygous genotype, you see that one trait, both these traits are inherited, right? Each of the allele denotes the trait which is being inherited from the parent, right? Now, but one of these only get expressed. So who gets expressed? The one who is more powerful. The one who is more powerful will be able to dominate. So that is known as the dominant trait. So in this case, for example, if you see, capital T is dominant over small t. So the trait which is dominant here is tall. So tall trait is dominant over the dwarf trait, and that is why the tall trait gets expressed, and F1 generation, all the individuals are tall. So that is the simple example. So this was capital T, this was small t. So all of them were tall. That was because the capital T is dominant over the small t. So that is the example of dominant trait. Now what about recessive trait? The trait which gets dominated by the dominant trait. That is the recessive trait. So this trait remains hidden, dominated by the dominant trait. So here in this case, capital T is the dominant trait and small t is the recessive trait. Now what happens to the recessive trait? Does it remain hidden forever? No. It remains hidden only for this generation, that is the F1 generation, but later it gets expressed. But there also, if you see in the F2 generation also, not all of them were dwarf. Only 25% of them were dwarf. So at least somewhere it gets expressed, but otherwise it remains hidden. It moves. Whenever it is heterozygous, it gets dominated by the dominant trait. It gets expressed only when both the alleles are recessive. So this is somewhat like this. So in the F2 generation, as you saw that here it was capital T small t and this was capital T small t. When these two were crossed, what happened was some of them were homozygous, some of them were heterozygous. So whichever was heterozygous, again the recessive trait got hidden. But for some, it was like both the alleles were recessive. That is, both the alleles were for the dwarf trait, and that is why this plant was dwarf. So any recessive trait gets expressed only if it is homozygous. So only under homozygous situation it gets expressed. If it is present in a heterozygous situation, it will never get expressed. It will always get dominated by the dominant trait. So any recessive trait will be expressed only when it is present in a homozygous genotype. That is only when both the alleles are recessive. Please keep this in your mind because this is very important. Now let us look at some of the examples of dominant and recessive traits. So if you look at the earlobe, so as I said, there are two types of inherited trait. One is a free earlobe, as you can see, the free pinna. The other one is the attached pinna. Now out of these also, one is a dominant trait, the other is a recessive trait. So which is a dominant trait? This is a dominant trait and this is a recessive trait. So if you ever come across a genotype which has two alleles such that one is for free, the other is for attached, what will be the phenotype? It will be free pinna. That's because it is dominant over the attached pinna. Similarly, if you talk about the eye color, so one option is you can have brown or black, and the other option is the blue eye color. So here the eye color is blue and here the eye color is black or brown. Right? So black or brown color, they are dominant over the recessive blue eye color. So blue eye color is recessive. So if blue eye color will get expressed, it will be present in an individual only when it is present in homozygous situation. That means only under this situation, when both are small b's, that is both are for blue, only then it will get expressed. Otherwise, if it is capital B small b, it will not get expressed. So this capital B small b will denote black or brown. If you take the example of the hair which is present on the back of your hand on the finger portion here, you can see here. So this hair which is present, so the presence of hair is one scenario, absence of hair is another trait. So presence of hair is the dominant trait and absence of hair is the recessive trait. So you will see if either of the parents have dominant traits, so they tend to pass on. If one of the alleles denotes presence of hair, so hair will be present. So hair will be absent only if both the alleles say that hair should not be present. So these are some of the examples of dominant and recessive traits. So now let us look at the contrasting characters of the pea plant which we were talking about. Let us see which is the dominant trait in all of them. So when you talk about the contrasting traits, so seed shape, the seed shape can be round, it can be wrinkled. So the round shape is the dominant trait and wrinkled seed is the recessive trait. Similarly, if you talk about the seed color, yellow seed color is the dominant trait and green seed color is the recessive trait. Similarly, height of the plant, tall is dominant, so it is generally denoted as capital T and dwarf is denoted by small t. Similarly, round seed is denoted by capital R, wrinkled seed is denoted by small r. Yellow seed denoted by capital Y, green seed is denoted by small y. Now, do you observe one thing, that all of them are denoted by the same letter. The dominant trait is denoted by a capital letter and the recessive trait is denoted by a small letter. Now, why do we use this convention? As I mentioned before also, because both of these are basically representing the same type of gene. Like this R and this R, both are to represent the shape of the seed. So the shape of the seed will either be round or wrinkled. So if it is round, it is capital R, and if it is wrinkled, it is small r. So please do not use W for wrinkled seed because that will create confusion. So if you are using the same letter, that means they both represent the same trait. So basically both of them represent the same trait, that is the seed shape. Similarly, capital Y and small y, both of them represent the same trait and the trait is the color of the seed. Similarly, capital T and small t represent the same trait and the trait is the height of the plant. Correct? So that is the reason why all the traits are denoted by the same letter. For dominant trait, use capital letter. For recessive trait, use small letter. So that is the convention which is being followed throughout. So please follow the same convention. So even if you want to give some examples, let us suppose in your examination you want to write some example to make something, to explain something. So even if you're taking examples, please make sure that you follow this convention, that write the dominant trait in capital and the recessive trait in the same letter but small letter. So now the question is, when do the recessive traits get expressed? Now we already saw that partially, that the recessive traits remain hidden in the immediate generation but later they got expressed. Why did that happen? Because recessive traits get expressed only when they are present in homozygous condition. So let us see, let us look into it in more detail. So let us see, when are these traits getting expressed? Now as I said, this trait remains hidden because it is dominated by the dominant trait. Now just think of the situation that if the dominant trait itself is not present with this trait, then what will happen? It will express itself, right? So when I say it gets dominated, something like this, in a situation like this, the dominant trait dominates over it, and what happens? It is not expressed. So it remains hidden. But what if the dominant trait is not present at all? So it will appear if both the traits are recessive. In that case, it will get expressed. So it appears only if the offspring inherits a copy of the gene from both the parents. So the offspring has to inherit the dwarf gene, that is the recessive allele, from both the parents. So only in that case it will get expressed. So basically this condition is the homozygous condition. So only under homozygous recessive condition it will be expressed. Thank you. Please visit www.examfear.com to watch more videos, attempt free online test, get free study material, find tutors and mentors. Thank you once again.